Hi Taurus, this is Tisch Aitken, and this is your monthly report for the month of June 2022. What a time it's been. It's been incredibly intense. We're just getting out and releasing this huge eclipse season in which you were one of the stars of the stage. There was a partial solar eclipse that occurred in your sign on April 30th at 10 degrees and 28 minutes of Taurus. And it was coupled up with Uranus, the planet of chaos and brilliance and the unexpected. Eclipses wake us up and shake us up, and they can bring things to light that we had no idea about. Uranus can also bring shocking news, and the combo really, made it a very hectic eclipse season for everybody. And then there was a total lunar eclipse that occurred on May 15th or May 16th, depending on where you live. And that was a south node eclipse, that which you released. And in Scorpio, the sign of death and regeneration, a lot of loss, a lot of letting go, a lot of painful emotions. And this eclipse occurred in your house of partnerships and relationships. And it squared Saturn, the planet of restrictions and karma. And there was a lot of heaviness around this eclipse time. And so we're all reeling from that. But as we begin the month, it's not as intense in the month of June. That's the good news. There are a lot of points transiting in your sign. So Mercury did re-enter. It retrograded on May 10th at 4 degrees and 50 minutes of Gemini in your house of income, money, and what you value. And then it returned to your sign on May 22nd, and it will station direct on June 3rd at 26 degrees of Taurus, setting off where the lunar eclipse occurred on May 15th or May 16th, depending on where you live. That heavy full moon eclipse at 25 degrees of Scorpio, where the moon is in its fall position, and it's a very painful placement of the moon. And Saturn will station retrograde on the following day at 25 degrees and 15 minutes of the fixed air sign of Aquarius, also setting off this lunar eclipse. That total lunar eclipse did square Saturn within a degree. That's the reality planet. That's like the judgment card in Tarot. Is this working or is it not? What do I need to purge? Some things were brought on you that you had no choice, but some things you do have agency, and you have to figure out what the messages are with these eclipses. And as we begin the month, Mercury squaring Saturn in the sky can feel like the glass is half empty, but it's really about using all of these points that are transiting in Aries, and there are quite a few, because Jupiter, the grand benefic, entered Aries. That's expanding through courage. Mars, the planet of war, but also the planet of passion and courage and drive, entered the Cardinal Fire sign of Aries on May 24th, where it'll transit until July 5th. Chiron, the wounded healer, is transiting in Aries, as is Eris, the goddess of discord. And they're all transiting in your house of spirituality and the unconscious mind, using your imagination to fight for what you want to achieve, and spiritual practice with all that Aries, that fiery energy in the planet of love and spirituality, trying to temper the anger. And many people rightfully do feel angry in such a difficult period. How can you bring a more loving tone to it, but also be courageous and fight for what you want? On June 3rd, Mercury will station direct at 4 o'clock a.m. Eastern Daylight Time at 26 degrees and 5 minutes of the fixed Earth sign of Taurus in your house of self and immediate environment. And that helps you to move ahead. Currently, I neglected to mention, there are also 4 points transiting in your house of self. Venus is transiting in your sign, bringing love and making you extra magnetic and glamorous. It rules your sign. The Uranus, the planet of chaos and upheaval, the north node of karma, where you're meant to go, is transiting in your sign, bringing big beginnings until it leaves the sign of Taurus in the middle of July next year. And Mercury is transiting in your sign, and it stations direct. So a lot of emphasis also on how you reassess how you can move ahead in a better way. And now Mercury is moving forward and letting you do so. But on the following day, Saturn retrogrades at 5:47 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time at 25 degrees and 15 minutes of the fixed air sign of Aquarius in your house of career and life goals. You're in a major career cycle. Saturn will be at the top of your chart in your house of public image and life achievement until March 7th of next year. And this is now reevaluating how you can structure your goals, because that's a major career cycle. And Saturn is an outer planet. We feel the build up 5 days before and 5 days after. So it can feel restrictive and harsh initially, but then it won't be as noticeable. But it's, again, you're in a big career cycle till next March, so making the most of it. On June 6th, there is a positive aspect. The sun forms a helpful aspect to Chiron, the wounded healer, at 4:44 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, bringing light and levity to the healing process. On June 10th, Mercury, which is the planet of communication, forms a very positive aspect to Pluto, the planet of power and transformation. And that occurs at 5:21 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. How can you be more creative in your thinking, more romantic, and how do you up-level and find courage in your thoughts? On June 13th, Mercury changes signs, leaves your sign, and enters the mutable air sign of Gemini at 11:27 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, where it will transit until July 5th. And this is about, this is excellent because Mercury loves being in Gemini, and it's about focusing on your finances and your creativity and finding value in your thoughts and finding new ways to earn income. On July 14th, there is a full moon that occurs at 7:52 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time at 23 degrees and 25 minutes of the mutable fire sign of Sagittarius. And the moon in Sag is a lighthearted moon, but for you it occurs in the house of loss and death and taxes and debt and joint resources. How do you find power in dealing with the healing process and facing very painful situations, or tackling difficult situations like debt and taxes? And so this full moon releasing the blocks to healing and finding some levity, even though it's a very difficult process to do so. On June 16th, the sun forms a helpful aspect to Saturn at 3:13 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That's good for structuring what you're trying to do and feeling centered. But then the caveat is that the sun also squares Neptune, the planet of illusion and confusion, at 9:41 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That can make you feel a little foggy. That can be a little confusing with friends conceivably, but it can also be very creative thinking and dealing with it that way, or feeling just intuitive and diving into that part of it. Saturn at least will center you. On June 20th, Mercury forms a very positive aspect to Jupiter, the planet of growth and opportunity, at 3:44 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. feeling optimistic, feeling like you can bring new financial opportunities into your life, and what you can, feeling like you can magnetize good things. On June 21st, we have the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, and the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. It's when the sun is at the maximum declination above the celestial equator in the northern hemisphere, and the lowest declination in the southern hemisphere. And the sun stops for approximately 3 days. In Latin, sol means the sun, sistere, to stop. You stop and evaluate what the season has ahead, what the summer season has. This officially begins, well, summer where I am, or winter, but what the season has ahead for you. And I cast the chart for Washington, D.C. The chart has Gemini ascendant, and Mercury rules the chart. It's in its dignity in Gemini, in the house of spirituality. The moon is in Aries, Cardinal Fire, conjunct Jupiter, the luckiest planet, in the house of groups and community, finding courage with forming your own tribe, with finding community. There are a lot of planets in your sign of Taurus. Venus is in its dignity. It's conjunct the north node of karma. Uranus, the planet of chaos and awakening, is also conjunct the north node of karma in the 12th house of spirituality, finding ways to find unconditional love and new ways to reach people in a difficult time. And Venus forms a beautiful trine to Pluto, the planet of empowerment, and that occurs at 4:23 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, showing that we can heal and up-level love. Let's focus on that. And with all the focus in Aries too, being fearless in that way, not angry or irascible, but really just going ahead and giving love to the community. And let's approach it from that perspective. On June 22nd, Venus changes signs and enters the mutable air sign of Gemini at 8:34 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, where it will transit until July 17th in your house of income and how you earn money. And this brings new financial and creative opportunities and new ways to make money. On June 25th, Jupiter, which is the luckiest planet, forms what's known as a semi-square to the north node of karma. And that can be a challenging aspect, but I really feel that it's bringing fated connections and opportunities. So pay attention to what happens around that time, the people you meet, and the opportunities that come into your life. On June 27th, Mars, which is the planet of action, forms a helpful aspect to Saturn at 6:29 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That's good for structuring your work and getting things accomplished. On June 28th, a lot's happening. It's our second retrograde of the month of an outer planet. Neptune, which is the opposite of Saturn. Saturn is reality. Neptune represents illusion and dreams and fantasy and creativity. And Neptune stations retrograde at 25 degrees and 23 minutes of the mutable water sign of Pisces at 3:54 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We'll feel that fog 5 days before and 5 days after. There could be issues with friends going on. Maybe you find out some news you had no idea about, or maybe a friend is going through a difficult time. And in general, there will be a lot of psychic and intuitive energy. For those that are struggling with depression or addiction, that can be amplified. On that day, the sun squares Jupiter, which is expansive, but also can be indulgent. That occurs at 8:59 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I usually find Jupiter aspects optimistic, even if it's a square. There is a new moon that occurs at 10:52 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time at 7 degrees and 23 minutes of the cardinal water sign of Cancer. And this occurs in your house of thoughts and ideas. So really good energy for writing down what you want to magnetize and manifest. The new moon is always a time to do the law of abundance and bring in new opportunities. And also Venus forms a beautiful aspect to Jupiter at 11:52 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And those are the two benefics of the zodiac. Beautiful energy. So really focus on what you want to magnetize. I wish you a lot of luck. June's not as intense, and you have been under the radar. So take care, Taurus, and thank you.